We entered into the practice period on Sunday. We have a Shuso, who just looks like she's doing tech. We have a techie Shuso. And our Shuso, sometimes called head student or, she doesn't seem, I can't quite think of the right word, of what it, but I'll think about it. What should we really call this Shuso, that position? But she gave a beautiful way-seeking mind talk on Tuesday. And it will be, it's on the website, right? It will be.
I'm told it will be, where it says recordings of blah, blah, blah. It'll be in there. It won't be on YouTube.
Yeah.
But it'll be there.
Yeah. So if you didn't have an opportunity to hear it and you would like to, I would encourage you to. It's a beautiful way-seeking mind is the story of your life through the lens of spiritual path. Amazing, these lifetimes we all have. And we are going to continue now into opening and being with the Lojong teachings. I'll just add for chat with that. We're going to also focus on the Lojong in the Wildland Firefighter Retreat this year. So that will be fun too. We're going to be, most of you know this, I'm just saying it to say it. We're going to primarily be using Norman Fisher's training and compassion Zen teachings on the practice of Lojong. I said this on Tuesday, but I'll say it again, as Norman says in his introduction of why another commentary on the Lojong teachings, which are ancient Tibetan. The root is Tibetan. And because Trungpa, the Shambhala lineage, lots of training the mind to cultivating loving kindness. I always feel a responsibility to say these days, Trungpa was a brilliant teacher and he harmed a lot of people. So more complicated people. And Pema Chodron, who is Trungpa's student, the Shambhala lineage, she a big focus on the Lojong teachings, and this one, Start Where You Are, a guide to compassionate living. And there are others, and Anne told us there's also there's stuff online from Pema, and there's also course simultaneously going on. And part of the teaching is Tonglen, which we will enter into next week, which is a beautiful, beautiful practice, Tibetan based, and it just here's a little book. Tonglen, and again, there's so much stuff online that you all can find. Oh, the other thing Norman says in his introduction of why another book about Zen perspective, one of the things he says, why another book on Zen, a Zen commentary on the Lojong teachings, which I think is really important, is that Zen does not explicitly talk about compassion. There's compassion in all of the koans and the stories and the sutras. I mean, they're just all an emanation of compassion. But the Tibetans use the word compassion, which I think is really important. Hence, we not miss what this is all about. And in these times and in all times, the practice of compassion. What is it? How do we do it? How do we turn towards our beautiful, swirly human minds and hearts? The complexity of being alive. And the Tonglen teachings are beautiful and ancient mirrors. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. I find it deeply reassuring that these ancient teachings are mirroring the same thing that we're all dealing with all the time. It's not like, I mean, maybe suddenly we're gonna be in a Buddha field and everybody will be walking around as light beings, which is what it already is and who we already are. But for most of us, we're gonna be just meeting. Our limitations, our conditioning. Not as a problem, but as agents of transformation. And that's what's so important. That's what I love about this tradition and the way that it comes forward through the Tibet and then through Zen, is there's nothing inherently wrong. And there's a choice point each moment about how are we going to be and how are we going to bring forward through our body, speech, and mind that world that already is. But it wakes up through each one of us. It's also important that it's called training in compassion. It's not, I really like to be a compassionate person. I mean, I really would, and so would you. But you know what? It's training. It's paying attention. It's showing up. And the good news in the bad news of the difficulties of our time and in the world is there's just infinite opportunities. So here we are. Compassion literally means embracing the suffering of others. Means to not turn away, to turn towards. And it's the practice of arousing bodhicitta. Trungpa calls bodhicitta the, I always thought bodhicitta was, I don't know, that it was completely light or oriented. But bodhicitta just stands right in the center of light, dark light. Just, and he calls it the genuine heart of sadness. I mean, my experience as a practitioner is that I feel more joy, but I also feel more sadness. My heart just knows. I mean, we always knew. Children know, we know. But there's just more of a capacity to be with it. I think there's also a definition of the quivering of the heart, which I've always kind of liked too, which is especially during this time of year, the quivering of the leaves. That's our hearts. It's like my heart quivers. I used to think, I saw somebody use this language, maybe on the applications, I can't remember, that my heart would crack open. I was like, I couldn't figure out, it's like, oh, no, there must be some way to get in here. It's just, and it's not how it happens. It's just, it quivers and it opens and it closes and it gets more tender, and it's a very alive process, these beating hearts. So we are cultivating the heart of a bodhisattva, not as an ideal and not as an idea, but to embody it. There are 7 points and 59 slogans for generating compassion and resilience. The idea is not to grab onto them, but to live with them, to reflect on, meditate, read them, try them, embody them, to reflect on them, to align with them. Most of the slogans are very down to earth. And we need to understand the ground that they arise in and the roots of suffering. Otherwise, when things get hard, thank you very much, but I'm out of here. I mean, it's not even conscious. You know, it's like doors and windows close because it's scary. It's hard. We got hurt. People get hurt. I don't know how to do this. So we stabilize. That's the beauty of Tonglen and the root of this tradition, these slogans, which I'll bring forward a little today and then more next week. So I want to say a little bit about the context of doing it in practice period and doing it at this time of year, which I think is perfect. The turning of the light to the dark. Seasonally. We brought forward Zenju Earthling Manuel's teachings about darkness. Darkness is yearning to be loved. Brought forward Joan Sutherland's teachings about endarkenment, which is different than enlightenment, or they're the same, just different turnings of the word and the phrase. Zenju says, her deepest vow is to be a person who doesn't cause suffering and who walks in peace. It's what we all really want. She says, if you're still holding up and trying to meditate right now, I invite you to fall down, to fall down on the earth. I used to teach a class with Lane Olson at Zen Center called Coming Down to Earth. It's so easy in spiritual traditions and with words like enlightenment to think it's about. It is about aspiration and it is about light, but it's the equal tension of light and dark and being here on the earth as light beings, embodied light beings. She says, what if our deluded minds aren't a barrier to enlightenment at all? What if they are the very path to it? So point one in the Lojong teachings, some you already know this. I mean, you've heard it before. I've heard it before, but you know what? We hear it again over and over again for the first time as we resolve to begin. Each moment, we resolve to begin over and over, dedicating our lives to bodhisattva vows, living from our deepest hearts and motivations, living our spiritual path, not as an idea, but in a body. Vowing to not cause harm and to walk in peace. And of course, we cause harm. And my mind isn't always peaceful. I'm going to read you a little bit from Norman, page 1 from the chapter Resolve to Begin. Train in the preliminaries. You can understand the practice and practice, train in the preliminaries. You can understand and practice this slogan 3 ways. First, the preliminaries includes everything difficult that has happened in your life up until the moment you begin the training. Good work. The difference between just suffering these things and trying to cope and training has to do with how you view them, with your sense of resolve and personal responsibility. I really call forward personal responsibility. Practice period. If you're in the practice period, you were asked what's your intention and what are your commitments. They may open and change, but in the practice period, as in our lives, there's a personal responsibility, which helps the collective practice period, but that's true in our life's moment after moment. Nobody can live your life for you. Your sense of resolve and personal responsibility, even if what happened to you was not your fault, taking responsibility for it now that it has happened, owning it as the stuff of your present life, rather than seeing it as a tragedy that shouldn't have happened, and that therefore there's someone to blame, even if there is someone to blame, or bemoaning your sad fate and life's terrible injustice, is training in the preliminaries. In other words, To train in the preliminaries is to stop moaning and feeling sorry for yourself. And to recognize instead that regardless of what has happened or why, this is your life. And you are the only one equipped to do it. And then based on that sense of personal responsibility, training in the preliminaries involves reflecting on your life so that you can develop the resolve and courage to begin a new life path. Training in the preliminaries is the process of looking honestly at your life and making a firm decision to embark on the discipline of spiritual path. I looked up discipline once because I don't know about all of you, but I can have sort of a karmic reaction to the word discipline. You know, so part of me is like, don't tell me what to do. It's very hopeful. No, it's a joke. It's old, it's very karmic. But the root word of discipline is to be a disciple of. What are you a disciple of? What is it you really care about? What is it that you're devoting your life to? And then what is the training and the path and the choice moment after moment to live it? So there are training in the preliminaries. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 essentials. And you come back to it over and over again, because then the slogans are going to get very particular and personal but this is the ground. So let me say, and I'll keep saying this because I'm going to bring forward the slogans from this section next week. We're not going to cover every slogan. Gretchen's going to bring forward some that particularly speak to her. I'll be bringing forward some, and I think I'll mention all of them. You know, like I'm going to let you know the slogans next week that are in this section. But it's really important for each of you to find what calls to you, and then live with it. Put it on your car dashboard, put it on your nose, put it on your, just live with it so that they become alive. But here, training in the preliminaries, number 1. The rarity and preciousness of human life. Can you hear, Patricia? Can't hear? Can you guys hear? You can hear, okay. I'll say first of all, I got a text from Kristen in the Sangha. She and Nicole are on vacation, and they heard yesterday that their 21-year-old nephew committed suicide. She said it was okay to say that. You know, we just don't know. So as it says on the Han, don't waste this life. Christopher Zimmerman. And I thought, and I told before the story about the tortoise looking for a hole in the lawn, that is the traditional story about the preciousness of human life. And I think I looked it up again just because I always think, oh, really, the whole story? You know, what is it? It's the origin is from the story the Buddha told to his monks in the Sunyata Nikaya, or the connected discourses of the Buddha, in a sutra called the, oh god, now I'm into it, I can't really say it, but a yoke in with a hole, or the hole for short. But then Nichiren, who is another lineage teacher, expounded on the story, and I thought I would just read you the story, just because stories are nice and we remember through stories. The Buddha says to his monks, suppose, my friends, that the earth was covered entirely with water, and that 80,000 yohanas down, roughly 1,200,000 miles, lived a one-eyed turtle at the bottom of the ocean. And in addition to being half blind, the turtle also has a belly hot as heated iron and a back that was always cold, like the peak of a snow-capped mountain. I never heard those details before. What this turtle wants more than anything in the world is to find a log with a hole that is just the right size for her to wedge herself in, so she can cool her belly in the water and keep her back warm. So. And the log must be made of sandalwood and no other wood, for sandalwood is known for its cooling properties. That's why once every 100 years, or once every 1,000, as Nichiren says, the turtle makes her slow ascent to the surface in search of a floating yoke where she can find refuge. But hers is a difficult path, because the ocean is vast, while she is small and half blind. Logs float here and there, and many are made of oak and pine and cedar. Some have holes that are too small, and the turtle can't rest there, for she risks the waves washing her away. Others have holes that are too big and cause her to fall through and sink back to the bottom of the sea. So the log must have just the right amount of space. So in oryoki, the Zen way of eating is just no more, no less. And she must catch that log as it drifts by from east to west or from north to south, even though she can only half see and therefore thinks the yolks are floating from west to east or from south to north. Oh my goodness. What do you think, friends, says the Buddha to his monks? How rare do you think it is for that one-eyed turtle, popping up once every 100 years to come upon the perfect log? Oh, very rare, said the monks, very rare indeed. Just so, the Buddha said, it is very rare for you to have been born human and to have encountered the Dharma and to have met the Buddha through the teachings. So practice diligently. Metaphors and stories are helpful. Like Gretchen told her story, well, this happened and that happened, and then I went there, and then I ended up here. As Gretchen. How rare and precious it is to have this life, don't waste it. To the inevitability of death. Christopher Zimmerman. We just don't know. So, all the people, reflecting for a moment, all the people in your life who are no longer here in human form. So all of this really motivates us to reflect on the full force of number 3, the awesome and indelible power of our actions. Our actions of body, speech, and mind matter. Are part of the shimmer fingerless net that is affecting, what's the story about the butterfly on the other side of the world, butterfly's wings affecting, you know the story, I think, anyway. It's personal responsibility in a way that comes out of kindness and compassion, not as a should. What am I doing here? How am I living? How do I want to live? Of course, you're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes all the time. But then reflection. Why is remorse and regret? Starting over again, over and over and over. And the inescapability of suffering. Sickness, aging, death. Not getting what you want. You really pay attention. It's just what a thing it is to be a human being. The world is not going to cooperate with our agendas. And then the moments it does, then we get all excited and think we finally got it figured out, and then it does something else. And it's like, I have them. I mean, it's just, It's so sweet and tender and poignant and sad and beautiful, and it's an amazing thing to have a human body and life. Which brings us to training in empathy and compassion, point 2. Absolute compassion and relative compassion. So now I remember reading or hearing that a Buddha, a realized Buddha, relative and compassion are, there's one Buddha eye, so it's not a flashing between relative and absolute. But I don't know, I can only tell you that, because I, like you, am a human being in a human being form. And what we have is two eyes. And we see in twos, we see dualities, that's how we see things and know things. And so we sit down in Zazen body and know one body, one mind, we can taste it. But our perceptive apparatus is that we're always going to be seeing the world through twos, otherwise I couldn't see that Lainey was over there as Lainey, and that there's a door behind her, a perception of that, and then there's the floor, and then there's, I mean, it's just how we know things. But I also have and can, as we all can, sense and a taste of it's all moving and changing and permanent and radical interconnection and one, which informs then how I see the two. So in this section, there are 9 slogans. The relative are very earthy, and the absolute are bigger than any emotion or object and are inexhaustible. That's what they point towards. The absolute is based in Zazen, meditation practice, based in emptiness. It's what bodhisattvas know. I remember I said this before, probably, is I was really unhappy when Norman Fisher was stressing that what bodhisattvas know is emptiness. Because I always kind of think that when you go towards emptiness, it gets a little cool and a little too empty and a little too intellectual, has been my experience. So I didn't have this feeling that, oh, to really know compassion on a relative level, you have to know the ground. You have to have some taste of the absolute, because otherwise the world will throw you all over the place, which it will anyway. But there's a place to stabilize. In a total vision of life as love, not as an idea, that includes everything and the absence of everything. Everything is empty and perfect and expansive and joyfully spacious. It's the nature of existence itself. It's always here. It's always been here. Everything is perfect just as it is. You are perfect just as you are. And so it's very helpful that we were earlier studying, when we were studying the climate crisis through Susan Murphy, she kept asking, what is the self? To ask us to go beyond our small view of who and what the world is. In English, at least 3 words to describe relative. In English, 3 words that describe the capacity, compassion, which is feeling the feeling of others. Empathy, to feel in others' feelings. Sympathy, Empathy plus caring, we want people to be happy. Please make me be happy. Oh, please. Yeah, make the whole world be happy. And compassion, which is sympathy for others, specifically in the case of their suffering, which is to feel the suffering of others. Bodhicitta and compassion arise out of dropping the sense of one's narrow separateness. And it's based on the wisdom and the knowing and the trust, because it is trust and faith that we're not alone and that we all do need each other. Which allows us to love actual people as they are in an imperfect world. Involves pain, some pain, always. Involves the capacity to accept. It involves actually loving a particular person, the world. Feel the losses, to cry, to fail, to hurt, to delight. So the training is always to go towards the pain and to sit in a deep ground. So let me, I'm just going to read the slogans in this section. We'll go back to them next week, and then I want to say something about the ceremony we're going to do. Absolute compassion. See everything as a dream. Examine the nature of awareness. Don't get stuck on peace. Rest in the openness of mind. And 6, in post-meditation, be a child of illusion. Relative compassion. 7 and 8 are about Tonglen, sending and receiving on the breath into practice. Sending and receiving. You are a vessel and a vehicle of transformation, of breathing in the dark and the painful, and of sending out the antidote.